Section 1 of A Little Book for a Little Cook. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. A Little Book for a Little Cook by L. P. Hubbard. Section 1. Directions. 1. Always use Pillsbury's best flour. 2. Sift flour twice before adding to cakes or breakfast cakes. 3. Make all measurements level by using edge of knife to lightly scrape off from top of cup or spoon until material is even with the edges. 4. Use same-sized cups or spoons in measuring for the same recipe. 5. Before starting to make recipe, read through carefully, then put on table all of the materials and tools needed in making that particular recipe. End of section 1. Section 2 of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L. P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. A Note to the Modern Reader. A Little Book for a Little Cook was originally published by Pillsbury in 1905. This new reproduction has all of the recipes from the original softcover edition, but is being reissued with the modern reader in mind. The collector will note some small departures from the original book, but the little cook will no doubt find what is here to be fun to cook, delicious, and warmly nostalgic. For best results, we recommend the following recipe changes when preparing these old-fashioned recipes. When using Pillsbury Best flour, there is no need to sift the flour. Just lightly spoon the flour into the measuring cup and level it off. When combining the flour with other dry ingredients, stir the ingredients together with a fork. Bread. Soak 1.6 ounce cake of compressed yeast or 1 package of active dry yeast and 1 tablespoon of sugar in 2 tablespoons of lukewarm, that is to say, 105 to 110 degree Fahrenheit, water for 2 minutes. Knead dough 5 to 10 minutes. Let dough rise in a warm place until it is almost double in size. Grease, the bottom only, of an 8x4 or 9x5 inch loaf pan. Bake at 375 degree Fahrenheit for 35 to 40 minutes or until light golden brown. Biscuits. Bake on a lightly greased cookie sheet at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 9 to 11 minutes. Gingerbread. Bake in a greased 13 by 9 inch pan at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 23 to 27 minutes. Sponge cake. Bake in a greased and floured 9 inch square or 11 by 7 inch pan at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 24 to 29 minutes. Muffins. Bake in a greased 12-cup muffin pan at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 to 16 minutes. Creamed potatoes. If a double boiler is unavailable, cook in a heavy saucepan over medium heat until mixture thickens, about 5 minutes. Fudge. Cook in a small heavy saucepan. Pour mixture into a buttered 9x5 or 8x4 inch pan. Chocolate cake. Bake in a greased and floured 8 inch square pan at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 23 to 27 minutes or until a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean. Johnny cake. Bake in a greased 8 inch square pan at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 to 20 minutes. End of section 2. Section 3 of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. Bread. Materials: half a cup of boiling water, half a cup of milk, half a cake of yeast, 2 tablespoons of cold water, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 3 cups of Pillsbury's Best. Way of preparing: soak yeast in 2 tablespoons of cold water. Pour half a cup of boiling water into half a cup of milk. Let it cool to lukewarm. Stir in dissolved yeast and salt. Add 3 cups of Pillsbury's Best. Turn onto a kneading board. Knead until smooth. Let rise until 3 times the original size. Knead slightly. Put into a well-greased pan. Let rise until double its bulk, and bake 25 or 30 minutes in a moderate oven. It will be well to consult some experienced person as to lightness of sponge and dough. End of section 3. Section 4 of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. Biscuits. Materials: 1 cup of Pillsbury's Best, half a teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 tablespoon of cold butter, and half a cup of milk. Way of preparing: sift flour, salt, and baking powder twice. Chop butter in with a knife until mealy. Add milk for a soft dough. Place on a board with a little flour. Knead gently until smooth. Roll out to 1/2 inch thickness. Use a small cutter and place biscuits in a greased pan. Bake in a hot oven until nicely browned. End of section 4. Section 5 of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. Gingerbread. Materials: half a cup of molasses, 1 cup of sugar, 5 tablespoons of melted butter, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ginger, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of soda, 1 egg, 2½ cups of Pillsbury's Best, and 1 cup of hot water. Way of preparing: put molasses in a bowl. Add sugar, melted butter, cinnamon, and ginger. Put soda and salt in a cup and fill with hot water. Stir into first mixture. Add flour, then a well-beaten egg. Beat hard. Bake for 30 minutes in a well-greased pan. Watch the oven closely, as gingerbread burns easily. This makes a good-sized cake. Here are Felix and Mary Ann, looking in at the gingerbread man, which was baked in the baker's pan. Cloves for his eyes and paste for his tie, wondering whether the price is high. End of section 5. Section 6 of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. Sponge cake. Materials: 1 cup of sugar, 2 eggs, half a cup of hot water, 1¼ cups of Pillsbury's Best, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, a pinch of salt, and half a teaspoon of vanilla. Way of preparing: separate eggs, beating whites to a stiff froth. Set them aside. Beat yolks until thick. Add sugar gradually, then water, salt, flour, and baking powder. Beat thoroughly. Fold in the whites and add vanilla. Bake for 20 minutes in a buttered and floured shallow pan in a moderate oven. End of section 6. Section 7 of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. Muffins. Materials: 1/3 cup of butter, 1/4 cup of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 egg, 2 cups of Pillsbury's Best, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1 cup of milk. Way of preparing: beat butter, sugar, and egg until creamy. Add milk a little at a time, stirring in gradually flour sifted with salt and baking powder. Grease a muffin pan, heat slightly, put in the mixture, and bake it in a quick oven. End of section 7. Section 8 of A Little Book by a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. Creamed potatoes. Materials: 6 medium potatoes, 3 tablespoons of Pillsbury's Best, 2 tablespoons of butter, half a teaspoon of salt, 1/8 teaspoon of pepper, and 1½ cups of milk. Way of preparing: pare potatoes. Cut into dice. Wash in cold water. Cover with boiling water, salt, and place on range. Boil until tender but not mealy. Have ready the cream dressing. This is made by rubbing flour and butter together, adding the milk, salt, and pepper, and cooking in a double boiler, stirring constantly until like custard. Drain potatoes of water. Let them steam a moment. Then stir lightly into dressing. Serve hot. End of section 8. Section 9 of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. Fudge. Materials: 1½ tablespoons of butter, 1 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of molasses, 1 square of chocolate, and half a teaspoon of vanilla. Way of preparing: melt butter in a granite pan. Add sugar, milk, and molasses, stirring gently until sugar is dissolved. Boil slowly without stirring for 5 minutes. Add the chocolate square and stir until it's melted. Boil again until a little of the mixture dropped in cold water seems brittle. Take from the range, add vanilla, beat until it begins to thicken, then pour into a buttered pan. Cool and mark into squares. End of section 9. Section 10 of A Little Book by a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. Chocolate cake. Materials: a quarter of a cup of butter, half a cup of sugar, 1 egg, half a cup of milk, 1 scant cup of Pillsbury's Best, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 square of melted chocolate, and quarter of a teaspoon of vanilla. Way of preparing: stir butter, egg, and sugar until creamy. Add milk a little at a time, stirring in gradually flour sifted with baking powder. Now stir in melted chocolate. Add vanilla and beat hard. Bake for 20 minutes in a greased shallow pan. This world is so full of a number of things, I am sure we should all be as happy as kings. End of section 10. Section 11 of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. Johnny cake. Materials: 3/4 of a cup of cornmeal, 3/4 of a cup of Pillsbury's Best, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 egg, 1 cup of milk, and 1 tablespoon of melted butter. Way of preparing: sift cornmeal, flour, baking powder, sugar, and salt together. Add milk gradually, well-beaten egg, and melted butter. Grease a shallow pan, heat slightly, pour in the mixture, and bake for 20 minutes in a hot oven. End of section 11. Section 12 of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. Little Talks with Little Cooks. The table around which the household gathers 3 times a day furnishes the chief opportunity for showing the results of good training, whether received in school or home. We show our unselfishness in preferring one another, anticipating one another's wants. On the table is shown the result of the unselfish thought and care of the chief homemaker. The labor connected with the preparation of the meal is either a burden or a pleasure, as one's previous training has made possible. We get the best training for active life in other than household work early in life, at school and home. Why not learn to be good homemakers while still young? We like to do what we do well. If we learn early, we learn easily and well. The work is a pleasure and success is assured. Beginners should master the little recipes included in this book. They require only a small amount of material, but enough for success. End of section 12. Section 13 of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This book has been read by Rosalind Carlyle. This is the tale that was told to me by a loaf of homemade bread, you see, as it sat one night on the pantry shelf, a loaf on each side of it just like itself, while grouped around stood the pies and cakes, the good old kind like mother makes. And one and all then and there confessed that they owed their existence to Pillsbury's best. I seemed to trace through the distant haze my bygone life in the good old days. I see in my vision a field of wheat. I knew I was there that the world might eat. I drank of the showers and the morning dew. In the noonday sun I throve and grew on the verge of a sunny crest, just as fast as I could for Pillsbury's best. And when I had grown both tall and strong, the reapers came, a merry throng, and through the fields they wend their way, just to and fro through the livelong day. Perhaps they were rude, for they cut me dead, but what if they did? I kept my head, and turned on my back and laughed in glee at the thought of the good flour I'd be. I know I was good, yet the day came at last when they said I'd be better if soundly thrashed. Please pardon me here, I can't dwell on this much. The subject is painful, my feelings are such. Oh my, but the straw, it flew high in the air, and the chaff chafed unceasing, but I didn't care. My laughter rang forth with increased vim and zest. My chastisement, I knew, just meant Pillsbury's best. And then came the time when I journeyed away to the mills where the roller mills roll all day, and all of them smiled with a happy grin, and welcomed us poor little wheatlets in. Oh, the grind of life! I was grasped and seized. I really can't say I was very much pleased, but to say the least I was much impressed, and when I got through I was Pillsbury's best. And now, in the latest fashions gay, in the big round world I have my say, for in this most becoming sack, please note the hang, both front and back, I journeyed far from the land of my birth, to feed the hungry hordes of earth. For those who know ne'er fail to say that Pillsbury's flour o'er the world holds sway. To the kitchen I go, to the bakers who bake the bread and the cookies, the pies and the cake. It was there that I met the package of yeast, who raised the dough for the coming feast. And that's why I sit and talk tonight, for tomorrow I know I'll be out of sight. So I'll toast myself ere this tale I close, to Pillsbury's best, the flour one knows. This is the tale of the loaf on the shelf, as told to me by the loaf itself. End of section 13. End of A Little Book for a Little Cook by L.P. Hubbard.